Another article that I thought was pretty interesting is I don't think we've talked too much about this company, but it's definitely, I think, one of the shadiest companies, probably top five award if I was to give them out in the States, Clearview AI. And so if you're not familiar with Clearview AI, what they basically do is they partner with a bunch of law enforcement, government and local or federal and local, and they offer AI-based facial detection services and a wide range of services that they offer law enforcement. And the way they do this is basically there's been a lot of controversy around them. They scrape an insane amount of data and images, or not data, more so images, off the internet. They got into some spats with like Facebook because they were basically scraping Facebook profile pictures and all of your pictures on Facebook that are relatively public, but normally you'd need to be logged into Facebook to be able to access them. And they would, create some sophisticated way to basically go and download all these images, apply facial recognition and search them. And, like, first of all, maybe it's not best for a private company to be doing like, literally facial recognition as a service is what they're offering completely. And one of the lines here is crazy that the CEO basically says that they're working on new features to make blurry images sharper. Sounds good in theory, but also means that images of lower resolution where you're in the background can easily be identified now, and make it possible to recognize people even if they're wearing masks, right? So then, I thought masks are kind of a good way to protect yourself from privacy in general. Like you wouldn't be surveilled as much, but if you're being able to identify people based on that, I guess what do you really do to even protect yourself, right? And so I'm pretty sure these guys have something. I'll probably get this number wrong, but it's definitely in the league of billions in terms of the amount of people's profiles that they have analyzed so far. So it's not like a small number, it's a good chunk. They only operate, I think, in the US. And so at least that's what they say. But if you partner with, governments, who knows where that really leads down. But have you guys heard of Clearview AI before? Or like, how do you feel about this company doing basically all this work? I mean, if the government, like the NSA or whatever, if they're doing it all, I guess you don't really have a choice. But now that the government's partnering with this private company, and where that private company has other partnerships that you don't know about, it's kind of messy. It kind of reminds me of like the Ring partnership with local governments and polices, right? They were sharing Ring camera, doorbell camera and stuff like that, video feeds directly with police officers or police departments without any kind of indication. And then eventually Ring stepped back, and they basically said you have to opt into this program, and a bunch of changes were put into place. But ultimately, originally the plan sounds good in theory, sharing your video feed information to catch a criminal or something, but then ultimately slippery slope, which is just kind of, I think, the theme of the show in general.
And the moment one is the technology itself is new, facial recognition, and particularly when you consider something like blurry images and whatnot, then using that for protection purposes or legal purposes, or identifying an individual when the technology is itself in an experimental stage is questionable. So what if you identify the wrong person? And this has happened in the past. Even recently, it has happened where you identified the wrong person, and you basically file charges against him, and that impacts someone's life because it is an algorithm that screwed it up. And that is something that we should not be deploying yet. I think we are far away from that point. Then the point about them being based in US, not surprising. Well, another way to look at it is, why do cruise companies are based in Cayman Islands? Let's just say it is tax friendly, and Clearview. Clearly a front runner in our privacy abuse as a service.
I was literally getting ready to say they got to be like the first nominee. I mean, look, and we spend a lot of time talking about like the big guys, the FANG folks, and rightfully so. When they can touch so many people around the world, and any policy or any tweak they make has tremendous impact. But you got a company like Clearview, who is basically ignoring the pressure that these guys are trying to place on them. I mean, damn, how bad a company do you have to be to ignore those dudes?
But I think the most chilling probably thing is that, you have heavy hitters, Facebook and Google, no shortage of like lawyers and legal funds whatsoever, right? But because Clearview partners with law enforcement and the government, who do you think is really protected in this kind of situation, right? Like you're not really going after them. And I think, there's probably a lot of such companies like Clearview that you have no idea. I would put Clearview in its own category of nefariousness, basically, because with Facebook and Google, you're supplying a good chunk of that information, and you feel like there's some exchange of value, whatever it is, for information you provide, not counting like the third-party website tracking and all that kind of stuff. But with Clearview, people have never signed up for the service, and they will search Google basically, and then just take your images results and just run through every single one and categorize them and create a profile on you. And I feel like there was a while ago, I'll have to dig up the article, but there are examples of people basically trying to get their information removed from that database and having difficulty or not being able to do it, which also is a bigger problem. So you've never signed up for this service, just like those directory services like whitepages.com or 411.com or whatever these other ones that we talked about, in the earlier episodes. This is the same way. You've never signed up for something. They've basically scraped the internet for information on you, created a profile on you, shared that profile information with a bunch of different services with no opt-out, no consent. Maybe it's a better way to categorize it is probably in the league of like credit companies, right? Equifax and TransUnion and Experian and things like that, because you've never signed up for that service, but that service basically determines your potential future actions because of some profile that's created on you on a bunch of facts that you never opted into. So maybe we'll have to create a couple different of these quadrants and charts based on like the type of business they're in.
And also, as I was saying earlier, they are based in US and they don't operate in Europe because at this point, US doesn't have any laws in privacy. So in other words, they are setting up in a country where the laws are privacy abuse friendly. Until that changes, we'll continue to see this. Just like the cruise companies or several other travel companies are in Cayman Island, or maybe use a different example, cryptocurrencies. You don't find a lot of cryptocurrencies come out of China or India, right? So the companies move towards countries that are friendly for their business model. In this case, the business model itself is privacy abuse, and they're based in US. And I'm hoping to see some laws that protect people's privacies. Till then, they'll continue to do it. They're not operating in Europe because they are protecting the privacy of the citizens there. So I can't wait to see some laws in there from US.
So basically, what we're saying is, like the Caymans is like a tax shelter, a tax haven, I guess. So the U.S. is basically a privacy haven. You come here to, if you want to abuse people's privacies, you set your company up here.
Privacy abuse haven. Actually, Cayman is actually privacy friendly.
You can't know who's running those companies and stuff like that.
So it's the opposite of Cayman for such privacy abuse companies.
And I love that Tejas has already created. There's the nefarious category under the past awards.
We'll come up with a full rating system.
That's right.